Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Comic Book Gentlemen, the podcast where we use our decades of being giant nerds to discuss the most divisive issues in the comic book industry. I'm your host, Greg, joined always by my co-host, Dave.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Dave. It's December. It's
Thank
been a
God.
year. 2020 is almost over.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure everybody's like breathing a sigh of relief with, also holding their breath to see what happens in the next year. But besides that, it's been a crazy year for comics as well. A lot of good things have come out. A lot of crappy things have come out. So yeah, I figured, this is probably our last podcast for the year. I thought it might be a good idea. Why don't we, kind of go over what we read this year and kind of discuss like our top fives, and we can kind of recommend some things for people and just have a big old comic book nerd fest. How about that for the end of the year?
That sounds like a fantastic idea.
Yeah, so just so everybody's aware, this isn't just comics and graphic novels that came out in 2020, but also just like basically just stuff we've read in 2020. That's kind of what
Exactly.
our what's it called, rules for this, even though there's not really a rule set, but just kind of like what we're thinking, just things we've read this year that we recommend for people and why we think they're good. So Dave, why don't you start us off with your number 5?
My number 5 was Tony Stark Iron Man issues 1 through 5, Self-Made Man.
Okay.
Was the story arc. What I appreciated about it was the fact that it really took a couple of different aspects of Tony Stark and Iron Man back to kind of the old style of Iron Man, where there was a lot of like espionage and intercompany fighting, and all these mysteries going on. And what I appreciated about it was it definitely harkened back to that, but then also brought forward and reconnected the character with a bunch of new characters. Of course, we had a new Iron Man suit, which you always do when they start a new series.
Yeah.
So, but they brought in obviously his biological mother was in it.
Oh, cool.
They brought in a character that when you first get into the story, learn that as a kid, Tony Stark basically embarrassed this guy with his robotics stuff way back in the day, and then decided in this particular arc to actually bring him in to help work at the company.
Okay.
It was just really good to see them get back to the roots of the character, yet explore some new relationships. They bring in the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, as kind of his love interest. They kind of reconnect, and which really for me really worked. And they brought in a really interesting villain who I always thought was just a joke, known as the Controller.
What a great name.
Yeah, what a great name. But the way they used them and the way that that the story kind of leads into the last issue, kind of it just, again, it works. And you have the Stark company basically being besieged by on two or three different angles by other companies going on. It just brought you back to that heart of the character. And what I really appreciate is the art is very kind of light with just a hint of kind of cartooniness to it. It just kind of gives you that light feeling, the coloration, everything. It was just such a departure from a lot of the other comic books that I would be that I'll probably recommend on this list that are a little on the darker side.
Yeah.
It was just refreshing.
Is this the storyline where he leaves the company and is trying to start on his own type of thing, or?
No, he's still with Stark International.
Okay.
They've got the whole company. Basically, it's what it is he has. You find out eventually that he's genetically engineered his own body.
Oh, what?
Yeah, and he did that for him and Rodney.
And who's Rodney?
Rodney, his one of his closest friends.
Okay.
Rhodes. Well, they call him Rodney, but Rhodes.
Oh, Rhodes. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Rhodes. So both of them are in these bodies that are not actually theirs.
Okay.
They're genetically engineered. Like it was like you just got sick of the model and said, "Oh, it's time for an upgrade."
That's so weird.
And you just put your brain into somebody else. And it was just interesting because again, there's just a fresh new group of characters. They bring in the Machine Man, and there's Jocasta, and there's this whole element of AI in the Marvel universe, like these particular AI, are they actually, people because they can think for themselves and whatnot. It's just, and it led very well into the next the next story arc. But just that beginning arc was just, like I said, it was just refreshing. It was nice. It was bright, colorful, exciting in the sense of there was a lot of action. It was just a good, nice anti-2020 storyline.
Yeah, actually something to enjoy.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I'm curious about his mom. What's his mom like? I feel like they never talk about her.
Yeah, so it started back in, I want to say it was Iron Man International, I think is what they called it. I may have that off, but anyways, it was he went on this big long search to try and find his parents, because he found out in one of the other renditions of Iron Man that Howard Stark and his mom weren't actually his parents.
Oh, okay.
So he's adopted. So he goes on this big long journey to find out who his parents were, and you find out that his parents were a now dead ex-SHIELD agent and a pop rock star.
Okay. So random.
Who had like a one-hit wonder kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's now it's him trying to reconnect with his actual biological mom.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. What a random thing to happen to Tony.
Yeah.
Did you ever read any of the Ultimate Iron Man?
Ultimate, yeah.
Yeah, Ultimate Iron Man. I always thought that was an interesting story where it had like his evil half brother, but he wasn't even that evil. He was just kind of like better at business and stuff. Gregory Stain, or like Obadiah Stane's son or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was like his
Well,
half
they've
brother
got in
somehow.
this. They've now brought full circle. Who again shows up more and more, and actually took over the mantle of Iron Man for Iron Man 2020, which is Arno Stark.
Oh, okay. And that's his.
And there's a lot of interesting things going on with him too. And it's just, it was just refreshing. It was well written, well illustrated. Just good. Yeah, it was nice. Like nothing that'll just like blow your mind, but just solid.
Good vanilla
right
ice cream.
Yeah.
Who wrote it? Do you know?
To tell you the truth, let me actually just double check that real quick, because I believe they finished that particular writer did pretty much the entire series.
Oh yeah.
Right up till, because it closed off, and then they went into Iron Man 2020.
Okay.
And I don't have it ready.
Okay. No
Should have.
worries.
That's such a smart question, Greg.
Sorry, I should have pre-warned you, I guess.
Yeah, you'll find a lot of the times when somebody asks me like, "Oh, hey, what was this?" and I'll be like, "Oh, it's great comic book." Why? Oh, it was written by a good author.
Yeah. You know that guy.
Yeah, that guy.
The good author guy.
There's probably about 17 of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You'd hope by now there'd be a few good authors at Marvel. Yeah. So yeah, we'll come back to that if you remember it is. I guess I'll move on to my number 5. And I know this one we've kind of talked about before, and I know you're kind of lukewarm on it, but my number 5 was Venom by Donny Cates, Volume 1, which is the storyline of Rex. So the thing I liked about this is kind of like what you were saying about the Iron Man one. It just felt like a good time. Like, right. The only reason I picked it up is because I've heard good things about Donny Cates. I've heard he's a pretty new up and coming author, and like his Venom run was pretty interesting. So I was like, yeah, why not check him out? I was at the comic book store and I found it, so I was like, yeah, I'll pick it up and read it out. And yeah, it just felt like such a good. Like it felt like a really, really comic booky comic book, and like right. It felt like it homaged a lot of stuff throughout comic book history. Like it had like the darker moments from newer comic books. Then it had like this crazy like Venom with guns and pouches 90s moment that cracked me up a lot. I was just like, this is the most 90s thing of all time, but it actually like is fun and makes sense and whatnot. Yeah. And yeah, I just felt like kind of like what you're saying with Iron Man, where it kind of like, it reintroduced some old characters, it added to the storyline and kind of added to the lore and whatnot of Venom and of the Marvel Universe and whatnot. I don't know where it's going to go from here because I haven't read past Volume 1. But like, the null aspect of it was, even if it does get lame maybe in the future, at first it seems pretty interesting to see where they're going for it. It has Venom meet Miles Morales, which is very, very cool for me as an Ultimate fan, because that was such a big moment in Miles Morales' history with Venom in the Ultimate Universe, because Ultimate Venom kills his mom. And that was such a big, oh my gosh moment. And you can tell in this book, it was like one of those situations where it's like, Miles still has issues with Venom, but then it's like, well, you're not actually the Venom I know, but so he has to like deal with that at the same time. And then I just felt like it was just a fun comic book where like there was guns, there was explosions, there was soldiers with Venom suits running around, and like there's some twists and turns you didn't see coming, and like I said, they had this giant space symbiote coming to murder everybody, which like I said, could be cool, could not be cool. And like I said, my funniest moment was just when he goes full 90s, and like they even draw his costume, they add pouches to the symbiote, which is the dumbest thing ever. Because it's like, why are you adding pouches to the symbiote? But it was a good time. I enjoyed Venom Volume 1 by Donny Cates. So I'm curious to see where it goes.
So with Venom, as a massive Spider-Man fan, as myself, with Venom, I have issues with Venom. Because when Venom came out, very interesting concept. The suit merged with somebody that didn't like Spider-Man. Their one goal was just to, torment and torture Spider-Man, eventually eat his brains and all that fun stuff. And then all of a sudden they just took like a right turn, a hard right turn, and just went off in another. So what's the one thing that you think you could say to someone like me, such an anti-Venom fan, of where they're taking the character, that would make me say, okay, I got to give this guy a second chance?
I mean, what do you mean by they took a right turn? Like they turned him into a superhero, is what you're saying?
Yeah, like not just the superhero, but the suit was essentially generated from Secret Wars, and then all of a sudden now it's this alien thing, and there's all these other ones, and there's like it just went like symbiote crazy. With all these different symbiotes and the various things that they can do, and it just turned into this bigger thing than what it originated as. And I just never drew the connection. Didn't really latch on. Like I didn't mind Carnage, but I couldn't latch on to the character of Venom and where he went.
I think it's a tough one in that situation, because I feel like this does everything you hate for what they did with Venom, because they really did focus on like the history of the symbiote. They spread out how many symbiotes there are. They spread out because like I said, there's like an entire army of symbiotes at a certain point. Like they retcon the history and say, no, symbiotes have been around since Vietnam and whatnot. So I think that's something you're going to hate. The one thing I think you might enjoy is they definitely give Eddie Brock more depth. Like I mean, I haven't read Venom in a long time, so I don't know where he's I mean, he was anti-Venom for a little bit, but like Eddie Brock feels like he's kind of at a weird place in his life, and it's interesting to see how he's interacting with having the symbiote again enter his life, but then him being in a different stage and being like, I've done this before, I know kind of what to expect, but then of course things get a little bit tricky because they've introduced Null, and it kind of warps his symbiote a little bit, but then like yeah, it's a tough one to sell, especially if those are the issues you have with Venom. That's literally the stuff they're doing with him again.
I definitely didn't like when he became like Venom Space Knight.
Yeah,
that was really
But
weird.
That was Flash Thompson, right? I think. Yeah. See, I didn't read that, so I don't know. Like this definitely feels more like it's getting more to the root of Eddie Brock, which is nice. But then it also That's good. But then it also has crazy symbiote shit going on the whole time as well. So I don't know how to sell this for you, Dave. I don't think this one's for you. Like I think you should give it a try, because you never know. Maybe the Eddie Brock stuff.
You sold me on not reading.
Yeah, okay. Like I said, it's kind of hard to sell you on the thing I know you're not gonna like. Like I said, I think you should maybe give it a try if you're interested, just to see. Like I mean, it's just one volume, so it's like not a super long read. If you don't like the number one, I don't think you're gonna like the rest of them. But
well, I do have the Absolute Carnage on my to read list at some point here. That'd be like dip my toe back in the Venom verse. and see. You never know.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I've heard Absolute Carnage is pretty good, so I've been meaning to read that as well. And even this had like, did it have an Absolute Carnage tie-in? I can't remember. I know one of my books I'm going to mention has an Absolute Carnage tie-in. This one doesn't. It's my next one that does. But yeah, Absolute Carnage I heard was a good thing. But again, the point of Absolute Carnage I think is to broaden the symbiote history and symbiote connectivity and whatnot. So if that's the thing you hate, I don't know if you're going to like it. Is the problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely do think there are some. Like I said, it's kind of like it goes very comic booky in certain spots, which sometimes is really nice to see and read. When once in a while you want to get that really kind of nerdy comic book crap in your head. So
yeah,
it's a good time. But yeah, what's your next one, Dave?
Okay, but before I move on to that, I have to admit, and this, and I knew this, and I think it's because I blocked it out of my memory. It was actually Dan Slott that wrote the Tony Stark Iron Man.
Really? You liked a Dan Slott book?
I did.
Wow.
And do you know what kind of hoodwinked me is the fact that this series dives so much into the connections of other characters, like supporting characters, which was like Dan Slott's like anti thing of doing when he wrote Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if he just kind of learned his lesson from Amazing Spider-Man or what, but
maybe he just likes Tony
Stark. I have to tip my cap. I was impressed. He's maybe just a better Iron Man writer.
Maybe it's funny that like the thing that makes Spider-Man great is his supporting cast, and he ignored it. But the thing that nobody ever talks about for Iron Man is his supporting cast, and he talked about it.
Yeah,
so that's
exactly.
That's pretty funny. But yeah, I'll never let you forget this. Now I'm always going to bring this up whenever you smash.
That is a very fair thing to do. The next one for me was diving into the Immortal Hulk.
Nice.
The arc of the Green Door.
Yep.
And the reason why I like this so much, I like the whole series.
Yep.
The series is great. But what I liked most about this one was the fact that it starts off with, you got the Avengers, you got a Hulk versus Avengers fight there. Love that. Mm-hmm. You've got Shadow Base introduced.
Yep.
You've got the Hulk getting cut up into a bunch of pieces. And then learning all kinds of weird things about his new powers, and then a little bit more dive into this weird psyche of his and the One Below. And that whole thing. Like, it was just like I've enjoyed the entire comic from issue 1 all the way up to whatever they're at now. This was just my favorite, like my favorite chunk of it so far.
Yeah.
Because it just introduced so many weird things, dark, macabre, weird stuff.
Yeah.
And of course they explored a lot of it as they went along, but this was where they just kind of kept feeding more and more of it into the series. And I just absolutely, I think this was probably issues 6 to 10 was probably where I really got hooked.
Yep.
With the Immortal Hulk.
Yeah. I can't disagree with you because I actually have Immortal Hulk on my list. I just have it in a different spot and a different chunk of it. But yeah, Immortal Hulk's great. We did a whole podcast on it. Highly recommend. But I'm surprised to hear this is only your number 4. Like, I thought Immortal Hulk would actually be higher. So I'm very excited to hear what the rest of your list is, because that's very interesting to me. Was there anything else that like you think in this particular set of things that really stood out, or was it just it in general was just so much better? Really good?
Yeah, I think like the first 5 issues or so, definitely dived into that first little bit of like understanding what this Hulk was kind of about, and there were a lot of question marks, but for the most part it was just kind of okay. He seems to he dies and then he comes back, or is that really the thing, or I'm not really sure. It just seemed to me it's like he kind of cracked the door open in the first little bit of the series. He just could let you peek in, and then the Green Door just kicked the freaking thing open.
Yeah.
And then there was just your senses are just being assaulted by so much crap going on, and you're like, oh my god, explore that! Oh my god, explore that! And then as the series rolls on, he's been kind of picking at some of that stuff. But it just really that was the part that just really I think put me over the edge with this title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And we'll definitely talk more about Immortal Hulk later when I get to mine. And yeah, we can even talk about like why one might be better than the other and go from there. So my number 4, I had to have my boy Ghost Rider on the list.
Oh,
So Ghost Rider has been really interesting lately. In the past couple, like recent years, because they've definitely transitioned away from Johnny Blaze and they've moved towards a new Ghost Rider named Robbie Reyes. It's the one you'll see in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's the one that's Jason Aaron's been using in the main Avengers line and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I love... Sorry. I love Robbie Reyes. I think he's an amazing character. I think he does a lot of things right. And I think... like just his supporting cast and his storyline is just so intriguing. I just find, because I read the first volume of Jason Aaron run on Avengers, I just found like it kind of seemed like he was just there though. Because the best part about him was his personal life and like how he's dealing with it, and also being the Ghost Rider. But then like, in the Avengers, he's just there to be the giant flaming skull guy with a car. Like even in Hulk, the one you mentioned, he's just there with a car. That's all he does. But like, so what this new run going on, Ghost Rider by Brisson. I can't remember his first name. Let me grab it here because I have it right in front of me. What's your name, Brisson? I think it's like Mike or something like that. Ed Brisson. So this is very interesting to me because when I first started reading Ghost Rider, it was Daniel Way and Jason Aaron's runs that got me really into Ghost Rider, and those were some of the most like interesting runs I've read in comic books of all time, in my opinion. I just thought they had like they just had crazy storylines, and like at one point, like Johnny Blaze goes to heaven and beats up an angel, like an entire army of angels, and it's great. And then like they had this crazy bombastic, and it was going so like pedal to the metal crazy, and then it just ends. And it was like, oh, okay. So I guess we're just moving on. Which, like I said, it took a couple of years before Robbie Reyes came on the scene, and it felt like once Robbie Reyes did it, it was great. However, this by Ed Brisson feels like they're taking the story points from Jason Aaron and from Daniel Way and continuing that story just like freaking 15 years later. So I'm definitely enjoying it a lot. This one, it actually takes place after Doctor Strange Damnation, which is when Mephisto came up and took over Las Vegas and completely decimated the entire city. It's all full of demons and whatnot. But then during that storyline, one of the funniest things happens where Johnny Blaze like rides up, and you're like, yeah, Johnny Blaze is gonna kill Mephisto, but then Mephisto just like, I'm the one that gave you your powers, and snaps his fingers and kills Johnny Blaze in 1 second. So you're like, oh man, Johnny Blaze is dead. But there's a twist in Damnation, so I guess spoilers for Damnation if you haven't read it. But it turns out it was all part of Johnny Blaze's plan, was to have Mephisto send him to hell so that he could take over while Mephisto was on Earth. So now Ghost Rider is king of hell. So you have this like crazy like juxtaposition of, you used to be Ghost Rider hates hell, like demons are evil, all this stuff, but now he's king of hell, and he has to like work with demons and like all this stuff, and like just basically like you have this interesting storyline where it's like Johnny Blaze is getting slowly corrupted by the demons, and like he thinks he's still doing good, but then like it turns out there's like this, obviously hell moves at a different time space, so he's like been like there technically for like hundreds of years, but like everybody feels like he's only been there for like a couple months type of thing. Right. So he eventually comes back to Earth, and he runs into why am I blanking? Danny Ketch, his half brother, I think, or cousin. And so he's like, Danny Ketch, can you help me do this? And Danny's like, dude, you're evil now. Like, what's happening? And like you just have this crazy like, shit's going down with Johnny and shit's going down with Danny, and like it's just like this really nice kind of back to the thing I started reading comics on. It was a really good like homage to what I first started comics on, and then it also continues and adds to the lore type of thing. I feel like that's a really big theme for us this year, was like comics that like expanded the lore and like kept it going while still paying homage to the old stuff. So yeah, Ghost Rider King of Hell by Brisson it was a good read, and I had a good time with it.
Yeah, you had me at Johnny Blaze.
Johnny Blaze, he's back, baby. Yeah. But it's like
with the new Ghost Rider and the way that they've kind of taken, I guess, where they've taken Ghost Rider, what would be what would you say is the one thing that somebody looking to read it, like you got to read it for what?
I've always enjoyed Ghost Rider because the whole idea of like, it always felt like a moral dilemma to me, because like in Spider-Man and whatnot, like traditional superhero comics, it's always like, hey, that guy's robbing a bank, let's go beat him up. Whereas this one, it's like, sometimes it's like that guy's evil, but he's kind of doing bad things for good reasons. So like, should he actually be fully punished? And then you constantly have Johnny getting tricked by Mephisto into thinking he's doing good, but then he ends up doing evil anyways. So I've always enjoyed that kind of like tortured hero aspect of it. Like, it's very interesting. This storyline, the thing I like the most about it is like it kind of feels like Johnny Blaze, because he's the king of hell, is just like the guy now, and like can do everything, and it's like, yeah, you guys listen to me now because I'm the king, and like all this stuff. And it's like that's what the I've really enjoyed about this. But then you still have Danny Ketch on the side, not the sidelines, but also a big part of it, still going like, are you the good guy, Johnny? Like, you're kind of still being an asshole. And it's like, it's always this like reluctant hero aspect of Ghost Rider 2, where it's like, I want to help people, but every time I do, my head explodes with fire and like all this stuff. So that's kind of the things I've always been attracted to with Ghost Rider, and I definitely feel like Ed Brisson has definitely explored that even more, and is still going with that type of theme going forward, type of thing. And like I said, I've only read Volume 1, which is The King of Hell, so I'm curious to see where they end on like a kind of cliffhanger situation, so I'm very curious to see where they go.
Of course
they do, yeah, because they want you to come back. Yeah. So yeah, Ghost Rider is always a good time.
Right on.
Yeah.
So with the, I'm always curious, because always people have like when you have those renditions of characters, if I'm not mistaken, your favorite rendition of the characters, you like Robbie Reyes.
I do like Robbie Reyes as well a lot.
Okay.
I would put him like maybe like half a point above Johnny Blaze. Just because I feel like Johnny Blaze is hard for me because I haven't read everything about Johnny Blaze. Whereas I've read everything about Robbie Reyes, so I feel more of a connection to him. But Johnny Blaze is still like the Ghost Rider. It's hard to get rid of, like, move past him. Whereas Danny Ketch, I've always felt was kind of whatever to me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely think Robbie Reyes is really good, and he would be on this list if he still had a comic book going, but for some reason he's only part of the Avengers, which is sad to me, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good times.
So my number 3.
Yeah.
Number 3 is, it's going to be a surprise, a shocker. It is a single issue.
Oh, okay.
Of the Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh yeah. Well, a new Spider-Man is going to be on here somewhere. So what makes this one issue great?
So it's in the middle of a series called Hunted, where you are bringing back Kraven the Hunter.
Nice.
And basically, the overarching story here is Kraven the Hunter's doing his Kraven the Hunter things, but instead of him, hunting, these particular superheroes or even supervillains to some extent, that all have like animal type powers, he decides, you know what, I'm going to capture them all.
Okay.
Which he does. He captures like the Lizard, Rhino, Vulture, like all of these superheroes and supervillains that have some kind of like animal motif about them.
Yeah.
And he gathers them all up. He then turns Central Park into a hunting ground.
Okay.
Sets them loose, and then has rich people pay to hunt them.
Oh, that's so cool.
With these like robots,
yeah.
So the rich people aren't actually there.
Wow.
They're just like their psyche is just drawn down into these robots. These robot like android things are running through trying to kill all of these superheroes, supervillains / animal themed characters.
Yeah.
They did a break-off issue. It was issue 18. It's 18 point HU, called The Gibbon. Okay. Now, The Gibbon is a character or a supervillain of Spider-Man's. It's basically like a monkey boy.
Okay.
Horrible, like one of these like old-time Spider-Man villain ideas that just like the kangaroo, like just not a very well thought out idea. But basically, it's written by Nick Spencer, who I have to give tons of credit to, because he's the one that's kind of manning up the Amazing Spider-Man restart, and fixing all that fun stuff that Dan Slott did to him. And he's bringing all of the supporting characters in and getting the character back to his roots of like what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's been great. He's done an amazing job. But in this particular issue, it centers in on this character, the Gibbon, who obviously is in the park at this time. And it runs through basically the background or the history, the origin of the Gibbon, and kind of breaks between knowing who the Gibbon is, from early childhood, and then it'll bounce back to him, running through the park, trying to escape all these hunter android things. And throughout the whole thing, you kind of, I don't know if I was just in just a horrible 2020 spot or what, but I read this issue, and I'm not going to ruin it because I want to give this to you and then just let you read it, and then you can come back. I'm not going to spoil this at all.
Okay.
But I read through the issue and I got to the end, and it hit me.
Really?
It hit me. It hit me so much I had to come upstairs, show it to my wife.
Yeah.
And walk through, who was very disinterested in anything I had to say about comics. But she humored me. But it's an issue, a comic. I don't know what it is about it that just hit me so hard during this crazy year.
Yeah.
That I just, each panel, the story, the art is great. Ken Lashley does the art in it. Fantastic art. I enjoyed the writing. It's just one issue, but man, it just stuck with me.
Really? That's crazy.
And, other people might have read this and said, oh, that was a small part. There was so much other, fun stuff going on during the Hunted. But I think it's just the end result of this issue is just, I don't know, it just stuck with me. It hit me. It struck a nerve, and by far one of my most favorite, single issues this year.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I'm excited to check it out because that sounds amazing. That like just one issue is just its own good enough to be on this list. Like that's insane to me.
Yeah, it was very, it caught me off guard. I didn't maybe I wasn't expecting much or I don't know what it was, but it caught me off guard, especially the finale of it just caught me off guard.
Yeah, I mean, you hear it's a storyline about the Gibbon. You're not expecting a lot, right?
No.
So that's crazy. It always cracks me up whenever they bring out like those old goofy like 60s and 70s villains and characters and actually like make them good. And it's like, what was happening back in the 60s that they couldn't do this back then? That's what I always think.
Well, it's just like with this particular character, I can't say that they changed him up in any way that kind of made him cooler or better or anything like that. It was just the writing, and it was just the story that was woven through this one single issue. That when you get to the end of it, and then encompassing everything else that's going on, it was just very impactful.
Just hit you. Yeah, that's awesome. No, I'm very excited to read it because I'm curious to see what it is. I mean, unfortunately, that means I can't talk too much more about it until I read it. But I mean, I'm very excited, and yeah, everybody should go check it out. I'm curious to see what this is. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, how about your number 3?
Yeah, my number 3. So yeah, I feel like it's been a theme this year of like old stuff coming back. This one's been out for a while. So I am reading, my number 3 is Runaways Volume 5 Cannon Fodder by Rainbow Rowell. So Runaways, I mean, we talked about Runaways a little bit because we had that podcast where I talked about the TV show. And the TV show made me mad because it sucked. And then, but Rainbow Rowell has been reintroducing the Runaways for the past few years now, and I've been enjoying it a lot. The nice thing that she's been doing is she's like, because there's a lot of history with Runaways, even though it was only around for like 10. It's not like Spider-Man, when it's been around for 50 years. It's been around for like 10 or 15, 20 years type of thing. But there's still a lot of history, and it's a lot of convoluted history because they had so many. They had multiple different writers, and then sometimes they were part of the X-Men and they broke up, and so many people died and came in and all that stuff. So what the nice thing that Rainbow Rowell has been doing in the past few issues is she's been trying to clean up their history and kind of like catch everybody up to where everybody is at this point. And like, you know, like, oh, they're all older now. Like most of them aren't even teenagers anymore. Most of them are adults. And it's like, what are their adult lives like? And like, where are they now type of thing. It was really nice, and I had a good time with it. The problem was it never felt like they were doing much. Like they never actually had like a villain to fight or anything like that. It just kind of always felt like it was just
they were
more
running
like,
away.
Yeah, they were running away. Yeah, which I guess is just part of the thing. But it just felt like more like it was just a lot of issues of catching up. Like it took a long time to get them to where a point was like, okay, everybody's good now. Now what do we do? And so I was very curious to see like, okay, what are they gonna do with them? And this storyline I enjoyed a lot because it did that. It moved them forward. It said, okay, let's try to see what we can do with the Runaways. And like the way they do it, it was very much like it was still true to the Runaways. Like it wasn't like they just immediately turned it into Young Avengers or X-Men, which I know they've kind of tried to do in the past, where it's like, let's just be superheroes and, you know, fight crime. This one they did try to fight crime, but they did like, you know, they had an evil adult and like, you know, like a lot of conversations about like, should we be like, do we have a great responsibility with our powers? Like all these questions and whatnot that is common for teenage heroes. And like they had a bunch of dynamics between like, you know, some of them don't have powers. So it's like, what am I supposed to be doing? And like they had this crazy thing, but then it also had like a lot of depth when it came to the villain and like a lot of like, even though maybe it might have just been this villain for this one story arc, it's like, man, you actually like still cared about this villain and cared about like, oh man, he has a crazy past too. And it's like, it was really like in depth and a lot of stuff happened. So yeah, it definitely felt like I said, I like Rainbow Rowell's run. It just felt like this is finally when the comic book turned into a comic book as opposed to just teen drama at this point.
Right.
Which again was my issue with the TV show, where it's just all teen drama. It's like, okay, you gotta have a superhero moment at some point here, guys. Like that's you gotta add it up a little bit, you know. So yeah, I definitely had a good time with Cannon Fodder. It was a good read. I especially like. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Like I was
just going to say with I'm very unfamiliar with the Runaways. Not something that I've gravitated towards. Yeah. So you know, I'm looking at you know, I've looked at some of the covers. I've seen the comics on the shelf and stuff. You know, what like with this particular comic, I guess this collection of heroes, I guess. Who's the one that you go, you know, if you read Runaways, this is the one character you gotta read this for.
Okay, I'd say there's two that always stick out to me.
Okay.
The first one is Gert. So she's the one in the group that doesn't have, or no, there's two of them don't have powers, but she's always been the one that never really fit in with the superhero aspect of it. Like she was always the one that was like, I don't even know if we need to be superheroes. Like, why can't we just like hang out and have fun? Or when all friends like start going superhero things, she's like, well, I still want to be part of the group because they're supposed to be a family type of thing. Like she's always like been that character for them. And then like in this storyline, you can tell Rainbow Rowell like her favorite character is Gert. Because she gives her a lot of page time and a lot of depth and whatnot, and it's always a good time. Like she reminds me a lot of my wife too, so it's like that helps a lot. But but yeah, I definitely Gert is a standout character for sure. And then the other one is the little girl, which now I can't remember her name, which is sad because she's my second favorite hero. Let me grab it real quick. Frick. I can't. She's so funny though, because like it's like most of them are teenagers and they all have these like crazy like teenage drama. Like he's dating her, but she likes him. And it's Molly. So it's like, but then there's Molly. And Molly's just this fun little kid who just wants to punch people. It's like they'll be having these like, you know, serious conversations about like, oh, you know, I've always loved you and all this stuff. And then Molly's in the background like, guys, I need a sandwich. Like, can we please get focused here?
Comic relief
really a thing. And she's always a good time. But like she's comic relief with a heart. Like you can definitely tell she's not always the comic relief, but she definitely like is usually 9 times out of 10 type of thing. And it's always a good time with Molly. So Gert and Molly are great, and then the other people are just kind of there, in my opinion. But they're still always a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that interesting that you got a comic book where, you know, you're looking at a group of characters. You know, I mean, it's different when you're looking at, okay, the Avengers. Oh, Hawkeye's my favorite, okay, because Hawkeye uses a bow and he's, you know, he does his thing and he's awesome. But there's this character in the comic book where it's like, yeah, they're just a person.
Yeah.
And they're like a great part of this comic book.
Oh yeah, she's one of the best characters.
A great part of this team. I find that very, very interesting.
Yeah, I akin it a lot to X-Men in the sense that like when you have a run that has like a set team for a long period of time, it always feels like there's that one character whose powers are just kind of okay. And they can't like you have like, you know, like Storm who has all these crazy powers, and you have Wolverine who has all these crazy powers, but then you have like Cyclops. And it's like, you know, his powers are useful once in a while, but you know, he's kind of just more there for personal reasons and all that stuff. And so that's what I've always liked about Runaways, was just like the really strong team dynamic and like the complications of like we want you to be part of the team, but you don't have powers. So it's like how do you still contribute and whatnot. So it's been an interesting storyline. My biggest issue with recommending Runaways though is there's a lot of like you kind of have to know the history in order to appreciate it a lot. It's not one of those storylines where you can just hop in and be like, I know exactly what's going on. It's definitely one of those things like
Captain America.
Yeah, because it's definitely one of those things where it's like, you know, like you know, we joke all the time that superheroes die all the time, but like these guys, half of them have died, but they talk about it a lot. Like they don't just like kind of like ignore it and go like, we don't talk about the time I died 6 times. They actually like do like, hey, no, I like they actually go like, you know, I freaking died and it impacted us. Like we were sad and like, but then you came back and it's like, how are we supposed to react now? So it's definitely one of those. It's very interesting that way as well. So I really like Runaways. It's just kind of hard to recommend unless you're a big Runaways fan. But if you are a big Runaways fan, yeah, Volume 5 is where it really started to kick into high gear here.
Right.
So yeah, that's my number 3. What's your number 4?
Nice.
Or number 2, I guess.
Number two goes to for me, Daredevil.
Nice.
The first story arc in Daredevil known as No Fear, and not N-O fear, but No.
Oh, okay.
K-N-O-W fear. The series is currently being written by, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, Chip Zdarsky.
Yeah.
And the art is done by Marco Cicchetto, who's really good. It basically starts off with it's kind of it takes over after Daredevil had a little bit of a brush with death.
Okay.
So the last series kind of came to a close, and then they did a short little series. I want to say it was about 4 issues, and Daredevil gets hit by a truck.
Okay.
So superhero got hit by a vehicle.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, isn't that how he got his powers? So he gets hit by a truck saving someone else.
Oh, okay.
And it puts him into obviously the hospital. He's on death's door. Goes over 4 issues, and it's kind of this kind of he sees Stick, and he has this epiphany. But it takes over after that. So he's not 100%. He's taking medication for his heart. He's just a wreck. But he's like, gotta get back out there.
Yeah.
I'm Daredevil. So he gets out there, and there's a lot of stuff going on with, now the Kingpin has kind of fallen out of being the mayor. You've got at this point he's just on the cusp of it. People are starting to realize, oh wait a minute, why did we vote the Kingpin in the first place?
Yeah.
Having that it's basically the 2020, just a short clump of what happened in the United States, basically, because they people are now regretting they voted for Kingpin to get into office.
Yeah.
But they bring in this new character. The character who works with the police, his name is Sergeant Cole North.
Okay.
And he is he's a bit of an asshole.
Yeah.
A bit of a just a little rough around the edges, but at the same time, he's very you broke the law. Mm-hmm. Like there's definitely a code or a loyalty there to some degree. But what I liked about this was it was just issue after issue after issue of Daredevil going, I got to get out there, do Daredevil things. I'm not 100%. Gets his ass handed to him, and then goes out to the next issue. He's like, God, you got to get back out there. And he just keeps going out there, and it just keeps I just like the way it just continues to ramp up and ramp up and ramp up. His life is completely a train wreck. everything around him. Like it's just bad. It's just again just a typical Daredevil to a degree, a typical Daredevil story, but they bring in some new characters that kind of help flesh it out a little bit, make it a little interesting. They inject old characters, like they bring the Punisher in at one point. You got the Owl. You got all these staple Daredevil people that are involved in the comic still, but you have these other characters that really help flesh out like kind of the story side of it. And it's just, for me, it was just like a great jumping on point of like, okay, he went through this thing and he almost died. And instead of them just going, oh, he's okay now, and away he goes, it's like, no, there's like some real life effects of what he just went through, and it's the fact that he's not at 100%. So he's not fighting at 100%. He's not dodging all the punches. He's not dodging all the bullets. And he's constantly getting the fat pulled out of the fire by other characters throughout the series, including the Punisher at one point. And the interaction between them, the one issue between them, is just absolutely fantastic. And to see, Daredevil running around at one point with his Daredevil mask, his Daredevil pants, I guess you call them, and then a Punisher shirt is outstanding. Oh, but it's just, and there's a little bit of a mystery in there too, because Daredevil's being framed for something, and he thinks maybe he actually did it, but somebody framed him. But then it's like, wait a minute, maybe I did actually do it because I'm just completely off my game, and I actually, he thinks he actually killed this guy.
Oh wow! By
accident, because he didn't know how to pull his punches. He was flailing, and this guy ended up dying. Oh, wow. And of course, it's like he's got this whole conspiracy theory. It's the Kingpin trying to set him up, and then there's at this point you're kind of still getting fed a lot of information of like, no, you did that.
Wow.
So it was just a really good starting off point, which has gotten so much better as the comics gotten along and kind of where they are right now. But again, it was just interesting to see that. It wasn't the triumphant hero returning from death's door. It was like, I barely survived.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to drag my sorry behind out and still try to be Daredevil. Yeah. But everybody's just getting the best of them, and it was great.
Yeah. That's funny because you definitely think about that all the time when it comes to superheroes. Is like 1 week they're fighting Punisher, the next week they're fighting Doc Ock, the next week they're fighting Carnage. It's like, oh, they're fine, they don't need a break, type of thing.
No.
So then to actually see somebody get their butt handed to them and then actually be like, man, maybe I should take a break. It's like, bro, you just lay down, man, just lay down. Like, that's crazy. I like the intrigue of like, did I kill that guy or didn't I? I think that's really interesting for superhero. They did that or they didn't do it. It wasn't really much of a mystery, but they kind of had that same storyline in Buffy when Elijah Dushku's character, Faith, when Faith kills somebody, and they have the whole like, am I just like not evil, but like, where does that put me at that point, type of thing. Yeah. It's very interesting for heroes to go through that of like, I didn't do it on purpose, but there's gotta be some consequences to my actions, and like, what does this mean going forward, type of thing. So sounds really cool.
Like as the series kind of progressed, he goes through this period of like, at one point going, I got to give up being Daredevil, and not like one of these like character infused kind of like, oh, I there's something tragic happen. It's like he's literally looking at it going, I just physically can't do this anymore. Yeah. Like, I have to just quit.
Yeah.
And it's been a very, very interesting run. And I find, maybe I got a little bit of a soft spot for Daredevil, but I really enjoy a lot of the arcs. Outside of that long stretch at the end of the volume 1 of Daredevil in the 90s, where he was wearing like armor and all kinds of weird stuff was going on, when comics were just horrible for the most part. Outside of that, like, there's a lot of standout, really well done story arcs in Daredevil, and I think this is going to be yet another one.
Yeah, for sure. Who's writing it?
It was Chip Zdarsky.
Oh yeah, the guy. Yeah, you can pronounce the name. Yeah, that's.
Hopefully, I pronounced that.
Right. Have you read anything else by him, or is this kind of like?
No. Okay. It's the first time I've ever come across him.
Cool. Yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes. It kind of the storyline reminds me a little bit of Daredevil season 3 on Netflix. It's kind of like what it reminds me, because he kind of has butt kicked as well, and was kind of like weird, like I'm done with Daredevil, but at the same time I'm still fighting crime because I can't stop type of thing. So it sounds really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate the rawness of this, like him taking his painkiller medication with alcohol.
yeah. Like a true
But
hero.
then turning around and chastising a young woman in the bar for saying, "Hey, can I have some of those?" And he's like, "That would be illegal." Let me go back to pill popping and drinking.
Yeah, as he chases it with whiskey. That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's great. He follows the law, man.
Yeah.
No deal. So I'm gonna throw a curveball at you, Dave.
Okay.
My number 2 is actually a manga, which we'll definitely have to have a podcast one day about comic books versus manga. But this is definitely something going to be out of your wheelhouse, and I'm going to try to sell you on it. So
I'm already there.
Yeah. So Attack on Titan is one of the craziest stories of all time. Have you heard anything about Attack on Titan? Have you seen anything about it?
I've heard the name. I've seen the books in the various bookstores. My niece talks about it all the time. Various other ones as well, but Attack on Titan is definitely one that she's mentioned in the past. But outside of that, outside of seeing some kind of like giant zombie thing,
naked people.
That's the extent. If aliens were to come down and ask me, tell us about Attack on the Titan, I'd be like, giant, like flesh golem guy.
Yeah.
That would be about. That's my explanation.
Yeah, like Attack on Titan is really crazy because on the surface it kind of seems like that. All it is like, oh, there's giant people roaming. Let's just go kill them. But like Attack on Titan never fails to like completely subvert your expectations and just pull the rug. Not even just the rug; they'll pull the whole floor out from underneath you, and you're just like going, "What?" But like in a way that you're not like just mad at it. In a way that you're like, "Well, I gotta keep reading. I gotta find out what happens next," and like all this stuff. Because like what they do in this book is like, you know, they just build up characters and they go like, this guy's so good, he's gonna kick everybody's butt, and then he dies in like the next page, and you're just like, okay, like what's the plan here? And I've had arguments with some people where it's like I love Attack on Titan, but they hate it because it's too bleak, because it's like, they're never gonna win, like it's impossible and stuff. But then like as the story keeps going, they're finally starting to get like their feet underneath them, and you're like, okay, they figured it out, they're gonna take them on head on, it's gonna be great. But then they get the rug pulled out from underneath them again. It's like, damn it. But like the story is actually gonna end. I think it might already be over. So I'm at the one I had on my list for this year was volume 30, which is either the second last one or the third last one. I can't remember. But the last season of the anime is coming out. But like basically the reason I love Attack on Titan is, like I said, it's like there's twists and there's turns and you love the characters, but then they still have comedy moments that are so funny. And like I've just started rewatching the first season, and there's a scene where they're doing like this army thing, and they have this drill sergeant just screaming at the kids or whatever, and then he stops, and everybody looks, and there's a girl just eating a potato, and he's just like, are you eating a potato? She's like, yeah, and he's like, why? She's like, I was hungry. It's just like there's so much dark, bleak crap going on, and they just have this girl just eating a potato, and it's like, what the hell? But like volume 30, so like I said, they've had like the story's been building, and it just keeps twisting and turning. But finally in volume 30, they started finally like trying to answer those questions, and trying to be like, hey, this is actually what's going on and whatnot. But meanwhile, while this is happening, they're trying to answer this question, there's just like this full out war going on with like everybody just getting obliterated and cities getting wiped out, and like there's so much death and destruction, and like even like I said, like some characters you think are like, oh, this guy's gonna save the day, he just gets his head torn off, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then meanwhile, like you have actually like some answers happening, so you're like just on the edge of your seat, like, oh, I can't believe this is the true story, and like, oh, I can't believe this is crazy. But meanwhile, this guy's dying, and like, what's happening? And like, and even though you think like, you know, like you think it's going to go this way, they like, you know, switch it up again. So like Attack on Titan is just just insane, and like it's gonna end soon, and like it's probably one of the best stories I've read in not just in manga and comic, but it's been a long time. Like I highly, if we ever get you to watch anime or read manga, that's one of my top. It's one of my top for you, Dave, because it's a good read.
Well, if it ever gets to that point, that's the one I'll read.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Because yeah, like even I actually don't read manga that often. I mainly just watch anime. But I watched the first season of this, and I was like, I gotta know. Like I gotta know what's going on. So then I started reading the manga. That's why I'm way ahead of the anime now. Is because I just like I had to know because it was so crazy. And like I said, like you think like, oh, it's going this direction, and then they just have this crazy like switch where it talks about xenophobia and like World War II Holocaust type situations and whatnot. And you're just like, where did this come from? Like I didn't even know this was an option. Like, like it's crazy. It's a good time. So we'll definitely we'll have to try to get you in there one day.
I'll keep that one on my to read list.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what your niece thinks about it because like
you know what I remember I was driving back from the because I took her down to the bookstore last time I saw her and she grabbed like I said okay you know I'll buy you a couple of these books because I like the fact that she's reading. Yeah. You know, it's comic books, and I'm into that too. You know, it's manga, it's a little different, but you know, I'm bonding.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember distinctly, walking along. She probably got some Attack on Titan, but she's like, "Oh, I gotta get." I said, "Well, which ones do you like?" She's like, "Well, this one." I said, "Okay, we'll grab that one." And she's like, I was like, "Anything else?" She's like, "Yeah, this one and this one." And next thing you know, she's walking out there with like 7 books.
Yeah.
But one of the ones that I got talking to her about was Tokyo Ghoul.
Yeah.
and I remember my wife was sitting next to me as we were driving back to the house, and I was asking her, "What is Tokyo Ghoul about?" She's like, "It's about ghouls."
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, dumb question. And I said, okay, but like, what do the ghouls do? Like, what's so bad with it? They're like, oh, she's like, no, they eat people. Okay, so is there like a group of ghouls, thinking maybe like Twilight or something, it'd be something she's interested in, where, this group of ghouls doesn't want to eat people? She's like, no. I'm like, is there like somebody that's running around trying to like kill the ghouls, the bad guys? She's like, no, kind of. I was like, so basically what you're telling me is this whole thing is just about ghouls eating people.
Yep.
And she's like, yeah. And my wife was so disturbed.
Yeah.
That this was the reading material of, for a 13, 14-year-old, which, I mean, whatever, as long as she's reading, I don't care.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I'm curious to see what she thinks about Attack on Titan, because it's like this crazy.
Yeah, she has read that one.
Because it's a crazy deep story about like racism and like fighting against injustice and whatnot. But then like I can see teenagers going like, but I like it when they eat the people. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. It's like, but like man, when they murdered that guy, that was great. It's like, oh, that's not really the point of the story.
What about the story? There was a story.
Yeah. I was there for the blood, man. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, if she tells you that, Dave, you got to get out of the house.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, what's your number one story you read this year, Dave, in comics?
My number one deserves a little bit of an explanation. It might be a little bit obvious, but my number one was a combination. It was House of X, Power of X.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I really like Jonathan Hickman, and then he was paired up with two of my right now favorite artists in Larraz and Silva. The story, what this would kind of reminded me of was like it was a big reset, like for the X-Men franchise. Reset in the sense of like taking it in a massively different direction.
Yeah.
And what I appreciated about it was the fact that it gave me that feeling of like reading Ultimate X-Men, where I read it and was like, oh, okay, this is in a different universe, but it's not the X-Men, but this was the X-Men.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was like reading the X-Men for the first time in a sense, because you're just like, who is this guy? Because everybody just seems like so different.
Yeah.
And just the overall story, and I think what really set it out, it wasn't action packed. Yeah, it had its moments. It wasn't what I would expect out of obviously X of Swords that's coming. It wasn't full of action. It wasn't full. It had its moments. It was just. I think it's more the anticipation of where the hell he's going with this.
100%. Yeah.
Because that's what Jonathan Hickman, has done. When he did that with the Avengers, it was the same thing. It was like, not I wouldn't call it slow, but it's just he kind of meanders a little.
It's methodical.
And then when you get to a point, it's like all of a sudden all that crap behind starts to make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And I think it was a lot of anticipation that made this exciting about where it's gonna go versus what you just read.
Mm-hmm.
But the combination of the art, the writing, the fact that you've got an X-Men series that's not just like, oh, it's the X-Men against Magneto, or this is every mutant you could possibly think of crammed into 2 books.
Yeah. Yeah, all the good, the bad.
I don't like Wolverine. That's okay, because there's other people in it.
Yeah.
It was really interesting, and the whole time I kept waiting for, like, for instance, like Professor X to be like, okay, I'm acting kind of like a dick to some degree, but I was waiting for him that moment where he'd be like, oh, I'm still Professor X, we just have to put up this front. But it's like, no, this information that he's been provided with and has now been shared, especially with the inner council, has completely changed the perspectives and the attitudes to some degree of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a monumental shift for the X-Men franchise that I just had to put it up at the top. Great art, great writing, and X-Men. So who can beat that?
Yeah. Hoxpox was really cool for me because I felt like for the longest time that X-Men has kind of been in a rut where it was like, there's only like 20 of us left. We're gonna, House M Day and all that crap. This feels like it's a storyline they've been working with for like 20 years now. And I was so much at the point now where I'm like, just move on. And it finally felt like Jonathan Hickman was like, okay, we're moving forward. Let's figure out. And then like the thing I love the most about this is they do the whole like, how we resurrect our characters every other day. We have a reason for it now, and like we actually have like a process of how we resurrect all our characters, and like just the amount of like, go ahead.
And we do it a lot.
We do it a lot because we have to, because we die a lot. Like I love the fact that they like create a culture and they create a language and they create like a place in the world, and like I definitely agree with you. That's the part I like. Like you felt like he was world building, but then it was still a part of 616, and it was still a part of. The main, like you said, it almost felt like a whole different dimension, but then you still have all these relationships and past stuff still apply. It just felt like it's finally moving forward with some. I think the only reason I didn't have it on my top 5 is just because I couldn't remember if I read it in 2020 or in 2019. And I was like, literally, that was my only like caveat. I was like, I don't know if that's cheating or not, so I didn't include it on my list. But it's really good, and like I'll agree with you 100%. Like it makes you very excited for what's to come for X-Men. So like
no, I definitely kind of cheated on this one.
Yeah,
because I definitely my second read of this took place just this summer.
Oh yeah.
Because after following with the series, I had to go back.
Yeah.
And go like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What did I miss? And I went back through it, and there's just so many different like. I'm curious to see where it goes. Like with the like, okay, now we're X-Men. We're kind of gods, I guess.
Yeah.
Because we can't die.
Yeah.
Like we just run out there with a band, and then if we die, they'll just bring us back.
Yeah.
It's just there's and to have a council with like people like you would expect like that would be at a council or on a council like Storm or Nightcrawler or some of these people. Then all of a sudden like you look over the other side and you got like Magneto.
Yeah.
Okay. Time and again he's been a good guy, bad guy. What's Sebastian Shaw doing here? Oh, yeah. No. Oh, you're looking at Sebastian Shaw? Why aren't you... Let me draw your attention to Mr. Sinister.
Yeah.
Like, this group just, like... I'm just waiting for... Like, the whole time I was just waiting, like, this is going to fall apart. How can this even work?
Yeah.
And somehow he's just, like, he's making it work, and it makes sense. and obviously as the series are kind of going along, now you see that a lot of characters have their own little motivations that are starting to crop up. But it was just, again, it was a combination of a good story, good art, great reset of a franchise that needed a little bit of a kick.
Yeah.
But so much anticipation for what's coming.
Yeah, 100%. Was there one Dawn of X book you think you should shout out? Like, this is the one I recommend to read?
I would probably say I really enjoyed the ones where they went into the future, and I'm trying to remember which issues those were.
That was Powers of 10.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that because I always like to see those things where they go, hey,
time jump.
This is what things look like in the future. They did the same thing with the Avengers at one point during his run on Avengers, where they went so far into the future that you were in seeing what happened or what became of what is thought of as the Avengers. Mm-hmm. And it was the same thing with this, but it was interesting. I know a lot of people will give it a thumbs down because it was Wolverine, but I like the fact that at the very end you've got Mario Taggart and Wolverine are like the last two.
Yeah.
Mutants, and then he's got a killer.
Yeah.
It was just really interesting, but I found the characters and the interesting characters of the future, and I wish they would, it's not like that what was that comic that they did 2099 where it was like X-Men 2099. It wasn't like that. It was just like these are offspring of other characters, and these are other New Mutants, and these are other mutants that we know live a long time. And they're still around, kind of mentoring these people. Like it was interesting, and I would like to see more of that. Like
I would love that.
I found that aspect very, very intriguing.
Yeah, like Rasputin was such a cool character. It's like you need your own book. Like this is so cool. And then like they had the like Nightcrawler looking guy. I can't remember his name. Like Cardinal. Yeah, Cardinal Rasputin.
Yeah, Cardinal was
so cool.
I got a soft spot for Nightcrawler, so I immediately gravitated towards him.
And I think that was the cool part, was just like the potential, like you said, is always just like, man, like who knows where it's gonna freaking go, and they gotta bring those guys back. So yeah, Hoxpox is definitely a good read. I highly recommend as well.
Yeah.
So my number one, I kind of teased it earlier. I actually have Immortal Hulk as my number one, but the storyline I have is Hulk in Hell. So we had a whole podcast about Immortal Hulk and why it's good. I highly recommend you guys go check that out. Immortal Hulk is just such a good comic right now.
Yeah.
Like the artwork's amazing. The story is so intriguing. It pays homage to Hulk history while still expanding the universe and whatnot. Like it's just such a cool, good comic book, and I highly recommend it. I can't recommend it enough. The reason I have Hulk in Hell storyline as my above the other Immortal Hulk storylines is I felt like this was kind of like the finale of the first like major arc for Hulk, because they felt like the first 3 volumes, so like 1 to 15 issues, were kind of leading up to this point. Where and like you didn't even expect him to go to hell and meet the One Below All this early.
No.
Like this is something you feel like, oh, they're gonna be building up for like 10 years and like you won't see him till the very end. But no, it's like, hey, you're in hell, fight the biggest bad guy you possibly can in the history of the world, type of thing. And it's like, geez. And like, but meanwhile, and it's just one of those things they whip out so early, and it's so like intriguing, like how's he gonna defeat this? But then meanwhile, you also have this like really in-depth conversation with Jackie McGee about like what it means to be the Hulk and what the Hulk represents in the world, and like the idea of like, is it a force of nature, or is it like something evil that should be taken care of? And like to have the Devil Hulk just have this like open conversation with somebody, it was just so intriguing to me, because it just felt like something that like you've never seen Hulk do before. At least I haven't, because like most of the Hulk, like even my other favorite Hulk storyline is Planet Hulk. Even then, he rarely ever talks. Like he's just there to punch, and then everybody else around him talks. Whereas this one's
not there to talk.
He's not there to talk. He's there to kick ass and chew bubble gum, but he's all out of bubble gum. So like this one was so nice to actually have the Hulk like just discuss with her and be like, no, like this is why I'm the way I am. This is the reality of it, and it's just like this interesting conversation. But then you also had this crazy like millions of demons coming at him when he still has to Hulk out and like all this stuff. And it's just all this crazy stuff. And then at the end of this volume, you have him and Betty Ross. You start learning a lot more about Thunderbolt Ross and like Betty's relationship and whatnot. And then she gets killed, and you're like, oh shit. And then but then he hulks out and like goes crazy. But then the green hair guy shows up, and Doc Samson, and it's just like, and then it just continues on the story. So it's like it's crazy like whirlwind of stuff happening where it's like, you know, you're fighting the major villain already while you're also setting up another storyline, and then you're also having this super deep conversation. So I thought it was just a really good all around story arc in Hulk and Hell.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue that. I mean, there's been so many good moments in that comic. Like, I really appreciated when basically, you know, Banner's being hunted by the Bushwhacker and in the shadow base, and then he's like, you know, scrambling, trying to figure out like how am I gonna get out of this, and then he turns over and it's Joe Fixit, but in Bruce Banner's body. Mm-hmm. Like it just like just all of the nods to your point, the nods to, hey, here's some Hulk history for you, but at the same time doing stuff different. And your point, like the Hell aspect, like he is writing this comic without any worry about going too big.
Yeah.
Like he's just like you turn the page and just like, what? Oh my god! I feel like you know, I thought the line was here, and where he is, you look back, you can't even see the line. Like he went that, like it's just what he's doing with it is just crazy amazing. The series has been great. To your point, we did a whole podcast on this. Great comic.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a really good sign of a good comic book writer, is they know how to break the boundaries. Because I mean, that's really what separates comics from TV and other mediums right now, is that there is no budget. You're not restricted by what you can put on TV, the screen and whatnot. You can literally just go all out. You can go to hell, you can go to heaven and blow up a bunch of angels, or you can go like be a bunch of naked people on screen that eats people. Like there's so many things you can burst out of. And like I do think there are some storylines that make more sense when it's more realistic, like, you know, probably Daredevil a little bit and like street level crime. But when you have a bombastic character like the Hulk, who's done everything and punched everybody, like, send him to hell. Let's do it, man. Like, let's go. There's no reason he can't. So there you go.
I do have, if you got time, I have an honorable mention.
Okay, what's your honorable mention? I'll do one too. What's your honorable mention?
Not Marvel related.
Oh, really? Okay.
Was the series Deceased.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We had to, at least we got one DC book in here. We got one.
Like, okay, number one, I'm a Walking Dead fan. I like the zombie thing. You know, it always be like, man, zombies are really boring. And then you put it on TV, and I'm like fascinated.
Yeah.
But what I appreciated about this book is I didn't find it your typical, you know, superhero book where they were like, you know, the writers were sitting in the writer room going, okay, let's put a list up of all the B-list heroes. And which ones are we gonna knock off? Which ones are we gonna kill? And then, you know, circling the A-list heroes of who's gonna you know, save the day. And this was just quite literally everybody's on the chopping block.
Oh, jeez.
Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, all your A-listers plus you know, any of the B-listers, everybody. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they actually took out a vast majority of the A-list superheroes was, I think that's what I enjoyed the most. It was just like, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, Batman or Superman or Green Lantern. You know, I got something for you.
Yeah.
You're gonna taste it. And I think the thing that stuck out was it seemed like the artist, the writer were having such a good time with this that they actually took the time to draw a panel where they were getting attacked by one of the superheroes. Unfortunately, I'm not very familiar with DC, but this superhero's powers is basically to grow tall and big, and basically they take. She's been infected. She falls over, and they're trying to deal with this like zombified super giant superhero, and all of a sudden a hole is blown through her head.
Oh.
And the body crashes to the ground, and all of the girls were being attacked by this thing kind of look over, and through the hole in her head, you see on the other side, Cyborg. I was like, they purposely did this just so he could draw a giant head with a hole through it, so you could see Cyborg standing on the other side. But it was just, it was just, what I liked about it was the fact that it was such a surprise that nobody was safe.
Yeah, everybody dead.
Absolutely nobody was safe.
Yeah, that's crazy. Is it? Did you ever read Marvel Zombies?
No.
Oh, really? Okay.
No.
Because Marvel.
No, the only experience I had with that was Ultimate Fantastic Four, where Reed Richards is playing with this like dimensional gate thing,
Mm-hmm.
and he opened the gate to the zombie world.
Yeah.
And the zombified Fantastic Four came in, and he had them caged, like in a cage.
Yeah.
And just the banter back and forth was worth it. But that was about it.
Yeah, because Marvel Zombies is pretty interesting because like it kind of has the same idea of like nobody's safe. Like everybody gets brutally murdered and zombified. But it is interesting because the zombies still have a bit of a like, what's it called? Will. But it's like their will is like I can still talk and whatnot, but I still want to eat you. And like it's an interesting story, but it always felt a little bit more goofy. Like it always felt like a bit like silly.
Yeah, and I would say this one is more of a like, as much as it's like it seems like a zombie book, it's not actually a zombie. It's more of an infection.
Okay.
That's happened, and it was just like I said, it was a delightful surprise this year.
Yeah, that's funny. And yeah, we actually got DC in there, so there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
My honorable mention, I finally read Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Shattered Grid. This isn't for Dave. Ignore this, Dave. If you are a Power Rangers fan, the true Power Ranger fan should be reading the comic books, because like the comic books are insane. If if you know the history and you know the deep lore and whatnot, it's so good. And Shattered Grid is awesome because it moves past just the '90s team. Like, because that was always my thing I liked about Power Rangers. Like, it always continued on and had a new team and new people and new villains. It's cool. And Shattered Grid finally moves past that and goes like, okay, let's get the other people in here, and like it just kind of continues the story that way. So I definitely thought it was a fun read. And yeah, if you're a Power Rangers fan, you should be reading the comic books because like they're so good. They pay homage. They talk about the lore, and they just get a lot of butt kicking and whatnot. So highly recommend. So yeah, that was our apparently top 6. Top 6 books we read and storylines we read this year.
We don't follow the rules.
No, we make up the rules. So it doesn't matter.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, we recommend them. It's 2020. It's been a crazy year, but why not read some comic books, and don't forget to support your local comic book store as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Because obviously, without them, what would we be doing with our lives? Highly recommend.
Don't know. I'm scared to think of it.
Exactly. So yeah, we're probably not going to have another podcast for this year. So thank you so much for tuning into 2020 and the start of our comic book podcast. If you have any ideas for other topics for us to tackle and whatnot, feel free to put them in the comments wherever you found us on YouTube, Spotify, Podcast Republic, wherever you found us. Put us in the comment, and we'll see you guys in the new year.
You betcha. Be safe and be good.